Welcome back to Hot Takes and Deep Dives. My next guest was a writer at Saturday Night Live for the past 6 seasons, a job she got somehow at just 24 years old. She was also a writer-producer on Shrill with A.D. Bryant, a writer on Showtime's I Love That For You, and is generally an overall delight. SUDI GREEN, I'm excited to talk to you.
Oh my God, I'm excited to talk to you, Jess.
How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. I will confess, I am drinking wine out of a coffee mug right now.
You did just admit that there is wine in the coffee mug. So tell me about your day. Like, what has led you?
I put it in the mug because I was like, she doesn't need to know I'm having a little glass of wine. And then I immediately said it to you. Or I was like, there's wine in here. It's like, I could have just had a glass. You wouldn't have cared.
What are you working on? Like, what is your day-to-day 9 to 5 right now? Because this is your first year not having gone back to Saturday Night Live. So, like, what is your day job?
What is my job?
Yes.
What is my job? That's a great question. Well, I'm currently writing the 2nd season of I Love That For You, which is the show on Showtime, which I love.
Amazing.
We are not picked up for a 2nd season yet, but The Room is happening, which is an interesting situation. But I think it's just like a weird corporate technicality thing. And so, we are doing what in TV rooms they call breaking the episode. And they're breaking, which is like when you find out like basically everything that is going to just scene by scene, what's going to happen. And sometimes it's frustrating and something's missing and you can't fill in the blank. And we are breaking my episode, and it was just a hard day for the brain.
Ooh.
Darling. And sometimes your brain needs a little alcohol at the end of she's working hard. And people think it's all just fart jokes. And that's mostly it. But sometimes you really have to think about like emotions and stuff.
In talking to a lot of TV writers, I have come to learn how frustrating it can be because it's really not your vision unless you are the showrunner. I was sort of citing the example of And Just Like That, how you can put the most brilliant minds in a room, but at the end of the day, whatever Michael Patrick King says goes. So
right.
Have you experienced that? We're going to get back to Saturday Night Live and how that differs from scripted television, but what has your experience been coming off of you've now been in a few different writers' rooms?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a correct insight, and I feel like it's something that often only people sort of within TV kind of realize, because I think that people assume that if you've written an episode of television or been involved in a room that you have a lot of ownership over it, which is sometimes you do. Sometimes your voice either really aligns with the showrunner. I felt like that I've been lucky enough that on all the scripted things that I've done besides SNL, that I feel like I was hired because they liked my sensibility and because my sensibility lined up with the person whose show it was. And you get that nice feeling where you're the jokes that I'm pitching feel like they fit into this voice really easily. But the final call is not yours. And on every creative project that you're contributing to, there's going to be calls made that you maybe wouldn't have made. I feel like if I had had the experience of working for a really intense, I don't know, I've heard a lot of horror stories. I have been lucky enough to not experience those. I also think I've always worked with people that came from that SNL world. And so there's just kind of already a head start in that sort of shared voice a little bit, or at least how you work.
I've also just an observation I've had is I think maybe over the past 10 years, maybe since the 30 Rocks of the world have kind of went off the air. Maybe it's the difference between network television and cable and streaming, that 30-minute comedies are actually 30-minute dramas.
Mama, honey, I know. And what the hell is going on? I swear to God, I talk about this every single day.
Do you?
Lord, oh Lord. Here I am, okay, and I'm an overpaid clown. And I'm sitting in the room and people are oh, well, where is her son? she feels abandoned and all of this stuff. And I'm like, I think this is great. I think this is valid. I think this is interesting. Why am I here for this part? That's what I always want them to like figure out the emotional shit. And then I come in and I do the jokes. And also, I'm always so confused because like I'll read these like these TV comedy reviews. Like the reviews for like Tim Robinson's I Think You Should Leave, which is like such a funny show, but they're like, he pushes absurdity to the edge in a way that reflects our current age of toxic masculinity for a generation of men who have grown up with the internet as their daddy. And I'm like, I think this is a very I don't mean to like boil it down to this, but like Tim Robinson is an exceptionally funny, silly man. And I'm betting, is not sitting in his writer's room being like, how could I speak truth to power about the generation? Like that's for other people to say. It's so crazy to me.
I'm trying to remember like when that actually started. And do you think it's because with more half-hour shows, like I'm thinking even like Weeds, right? Like that was like a comedy, but a lot of these comedies, once they went over to like Showtime and HBO, they had the ability to be much darker. Like once you're able to put like sex and violence into a comedy, that's not a comedy anymore.
I think that when cables became a thing and comedies got to become more experimental often meant dramatic.
Or dark.
Dark. And I really appreciate shows that straddle that line really well. I think Weeds is a great example. I think Sopranos is a drama, but I think Sopranos is hilarious often. And I feel like I love that those shows exist. I do agree with you that I wish that there was a space for like the Seinfelds of the world where it's like, and maybe that exists on network TV and I'm just not watching network TV. I also think it's an Emmys grab, which is really what it is.
Oh,
which
you're
is like,
so right.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's a complete Emmys grab where it's like everybody's just trying to make transparent again.
Yes.
Which is a great show, but am I laughing?
Wait, you know what's funny? So I saw Bro. Have you seen Bros yet?
Yes.
Okay. So you know how Deborah Messing says, she goes, and I won an Emmy. She goes, against Sarah Jessica Parker. And people forget that. I don't know what episode she won for, but I guarantee, much like Helen Hunt, like for Mad About You, which I was obsessed with in the day, they won for like dramatic episodes.
Yeah, I bet. And you know what? I think it's just because more people like recognize the ardor in that kind of performance, whereas people assume because something is maybe lighthearted that it isn't difficult, which is not true. It stinks. I mean, like, because what I get off on is when somebody is doing like a tour de force comedy performance and something is just like off the walls insane. You know what I mean? Like, I just think of like the episode of Veep where she gets like where Julia Louis-Dreyfus gets her eyes done.
Yes.
And like, it's so psycho. She has that insane look. And like, Julia Louis-Dreyfus is an incredible comedic actress. And I think that those comedic performances are like what get me excited.
A lot of writers want to be performers. That's like very well known. And I know that you started out performing like in improv and sketch. Like that was your background, like in college and even post-college. Did you want to be a professional actor, or like was your goal to be on SNL or to simply write for it?
I think for a lot of writers that want to be performers, I think a lot of writers are performers and a lot of performers are writers. And so kind of the two, especially in comedy, just work in tandem. And I set out to be a comedian and I knew that meant both. And I was interested in both and I enjoyed doing both. Yeah, I want to be on SNL. I think a lot of the writers on the show want to be on SNL. And I think that you have that skill set. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to write for the people that are on SNL. You really have to have like that performer's background. And guess what? Not everybody get to be. Not everybody, spoiler alert, newsflash, not everybody get to be on TV. Not everybody get to write for TV. And then they just kind of put you where you end up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. Like, I think even, I know, like famously, like we all know, like your two best friends are Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang. And famously. And I've interviewed Matt Rogers twice. We had two like really great conversations. And he told me his whole journey, his whole story, how he basically was up auditioning, like strangely enough, at the same exact time as Bowen.
Yeah, I was there. I was sitting next to Lauren. I mean, like I was there.
Isn't that so insane? 3 college best friends, and you all hit this like career make or break / peak at such a young age.
Well, I think that the fact that we were young, is it crazy or does it actually make a lot of sense that we were all together, all met at NYU, all were interested in comedy, running in the same circles, inspired by the same people, making each other better. I mean, I met Matt and Bowen when I was at NYU, and I was just actually at dinner with Matt and his parents. And we were reminiscing about that college time. And my major takeaway is that like we all just took it so seriously at such a like young age, and being in New York really gave us the permission to take it seriously, because you're like, I think that we were like delusional and we were like, it starts now, you know what I mean? Even though I was like 18 and had no idea what the fuck I was doing. And I think that those same circles and drives and experiences that made us friends and that we were doing after college also all brought us eventually to kind of like that rite of passage, which is going through the SNL audition process. Like even when I have friends now that like they get the call and they're like, you're showcasing or you're auditioning or whatever, like no matter what happens, whether you get on the show or not, or get hired on the show or not, I'm always like, yes. It never surprises me because I'm like, yes, you're really good and you're out there, and somebody saw you and they were like, go through this process. I think this person has something. It's like a weird thing because it sounds so crazy. And when I was, before I was in this world, if you told me that this was going to be my life and this was going to be my friend's life, I'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? But once you're kind of in it, you realize sort of like it's a bit of a small world.
Well, maybe like talk about the UCB system, like how that really, in New York at least, kind of was the post-college breeding ground for a lot of people who would eventually wind up on SNL or try to get on SNL, or in the case of Darcy Carden, winds up on, a TV show. Not a TV. Saturday Night Live is famously a TV show, a scripted show.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah, right. I mean, it was just this like, this breeding ground, much like I think going to NYU was. It was just like a breeding ground and a meeting place for a lot of people that really wanted to do comedy and were taking it really seriously and giving it all they got. And I think it's super important to be like exposed to people who are a lot better than you are. And UCB was that for me. Like I just saw where the bar was over and over and over again. And it lights a fire under your ass. And it also kind of shows you that it's semi-obtainable. And the steps are sort of like demystified. I mean, not that you can just follow the steps. Like, I don't think you actually have to be, funny and talented. But if you have a little bit of that, if you have a little bit of that and you can use that potential and kind of really harness it. I mean, my improv time, it was kind of like I was like on what they call an indie team, eventually trying to audition for the house teams, which I never got on. I actually was never on a house team at UCB. I kind of kept like fucking up my auditions so bad. And
also, Abby Jacobson and Alana Glazer, they couldn't get on a house team either. That's why they went off and it's so interesting.
Yeah.
Like these indie teams those are the people who wind up kind of making it in a huge way.
Well, it just shows that you have to make stuff no matter what. And like, there's this clear system in front of you when you're at like an improv theater, whether it be like UCB or Chicago or Second City or one of those. But it's like, there are these clear steps, but really what those steps are and what those opportunities are opportunities to make something at like a higher platform. And like, it's not necessary that you do it through that system.
How did you land on NYU? as the school? Because I know you're from Delaware. I know your backstory. But when you did you apply anywhere else?
Well, I come from like a family of kind of academics. My dad's a professor for political science at University of Delaware, and I have like a lot of academics in my family. So like college was actually just like a huge deal. Like the whole college application process was like my parents were involved. I was like really into high school debate. And which I think there's a lot of crossover with comedians and like doing debate because people have to listen to you talk and there's like an appeal there. But I always knew in the back of my head that like theater and acting and that stuff was my passion. And so I like applied for a weird mix of schools, which I was like, thought I wanted to be like a political speechwriter for some reason, because I like watched a lot of West Wing and I wanted to be like Rob Lowe in West Wing. And I was like, I'll be creative, but it'll also be politics, which I'm like passionate about. And so I like applied to GW to do that. And then I kind of thought that I wouldn't be able to sell my parents on acting for some reason. I just kind of felt like it wasn't like serious enough or something. So then I like applied to Emerson for their TV writing program, and I applied to NYU for their dramatic writing program. And then I ended up getting into NYU. And I think that the fact that like, even though I don't know how on board my parents were for me like going to art school and them having to like pay for it, I think that they were like, okay, well, like she can still take classes and learn something at NYU. And like, we can tell our friend she's going there and not be embarrassed or like have to explain what it is. So I think they were on board. And then, I mean, I really went because I got in. I mean, like I really wanted to go, and then I got in, and it was also like the best school I got into.
So I graduated high school in the year 2000. So my NYU class, my freshman year at NYU was 2000.
Oh, you went to NYU?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I didn't know. Okay,
yeah, so I'm from Long Island, and I applied early decision. I was like, I'm going to NYU.
You're like, I know.
So you know how you wanted to be a political writer because of the West Wing? I knew I was going to NYU because I was obsessed with Felicity.
Felicity was huge in my household because my sister was so into Felicity. And we went to Dean and DeLuca one time on a trip.
Astor Place hair.
And that was huge.
So I was telling you before, I still live in Manhattan, and that Astor Place haircutters is still there. Where they shoot the exterior, where she goes to get the haircut.
Oh, I remember Astor Place hair, and I did not think that still existed.
Can you believe that lasted? Can you believe that's lasted 20 years and a pandemic? I've never seen a human being go in there.
But it must be some sort of front for something.
It's got to be a front.
There's a sideline of cash going to that little barber shop.
NYU culture was very, what school are you in? Are you in Tisch or like the Stern School of Business was like that for me. I remember being very intimidated, or like that was like a big brag. Or if you were really cool, you were in Gallatin, which meant you just made up your whole fucking curriculum. Like I remember which kids did you think were more cool? The Tisch kids or the Gallatin kids?
Oh, I always felt like the Gallatin kids were like on something that I wasn't on.
Me too.
Like I was like, okay, like I just admired like their balls. I also think like coming from a family of academics, I was like, so you're gonna just come up with a list of books you're gonna read and that's your education? I was like, no way my parents are gonna be cool
like
with
I'm furious that I didn't do that. Like that sounds like that sounds like a dream.
No, I hard disagree. I mean, I think anybody who wanted to do that and got what they wanted out of it, all the more power to you. But I would say on the whole, people that age should not be in charge of educating themselves. And it's like, there's kind of something to be said of like, mama, go learn math. Okay? Sweetheart, I know you want to study like mime and Alzheimer's, but maybe you kind of learn what happened in World War II for a little bit. And then we kind of decide what we want to do with our lives. I don't know. It's a very expensive reading list.
It's crazy.
I'll just say that.
When I was there, it was $40,000 a year for room and board?
When I was there, Tish was like $62,000 a fucking semester.
No.
Isn't that I mean, the amount of debt I was in when I graduated.
Oh my God. The second thing I think of when I think of NYU culture is because there's no sports or sororities, they don't have those classic things where, like, when you go away to school, that's typically how you would make your friends. It breeds a certain type of kid. I don't know, for some reason, like, everyone who lived in my building, like, turned out gay. Like, literally, like, my floor, we all were gay. It was crazy. Like, I don't know how that happened. But it was so early on, like, nobody was, like, out or talking about it.
Right.
Because it was it was literally 2000. But yet we were all still, like, gathering and watching Will and Grace and, like, learning, like, the choreography to NSYNC videos. Like, that was definitely happening. But, like, I don't know how much sex was happening.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a very, like, innocent time.
I think it does breed a certain type of kid because I think that I think it's like a meeting of a bunch of, like, kids who were like, they were making such a choice to go to a school in a city with no sports because I think that they knew that that's where they would belong. Maybe that it was, you know, even if the people in your dorm weren't out, you know, publicly or even to themselves yet, they knew that they didn't want that typical college experience of we're going to the frat, we're going to the sorority, and we're going to the football game. They knew that that wasn't for them.
And did the three of you meet, like, were you all in class together, or did you meet in a sketch, like, side thing?
Yeah, we met because Matt and I were in the sketch group at NYU Hammercats, and Bowen was in the improv group Danger Box. And then when we graduated, we were all in the same sketch group that was called Pop Roulette together. We performed at the Pit and then UCB. But Matt and I were also, like, we were in the same department. We both did dramatic writing. Bowen was, like, pre-med at this point. He was like a bio major or a chemistry major.
Wow.
He's smart.
Yeah, no, he's
actually smart. And Matt and I are kind of like we're like the kind of smart that's like articulate, but like if you go like 3 levels below the surface, it's actually bullshit.
So I imagine it was like putting in all of that time in the sketch groups like Hammercats and like Pop Roulette. It's all of that eventually gave you the skills to put together. I mean, from what I understand, as a writer, you have to put together like a packet of different sketches to submit.
Yeah. So my like path to SNL was that I was in the sketch group Pop Roulette with Matt and Bowen and a bunch of other really talented people. We went to the sketch festival in Chicago Sketch Fest, and I met this woman who was worked for 3 Arts, which is a management company. And she went up to me and she was like, hey, right now I'm an assistant, but I'm going to be promoted soon. And, you know, we should talk and all this stuff. And I didn't know, I was so stupid. This is a theme in me. Like, was kind of like bumbling through life. I was not like industry savvy. Like, I didn't know how anything was happening. And I kind of just like took her card and ignored it. And then like months later, she was like, hey, I'm a manager now and I just moved to New York, and will you like send me all of anything you have? And so I had all this stuff from NYU. I guess it's like my first year out of college. So I sent her some sketches and I sent her like my senior thesis and all of this stuff. So then I had a manager. And then once I had a manager, one of the first things that she was like, hey, do you want to do this, was put together an SNL tape.
Wow.
And so I did that. And that was kind of the first time I had done characters and sketches, but I'd never done solo characters. So I put together this like solo character tape of like some impressions, and I really wrote for the tape. Some of it was material I already had, but most of it was like written for the tape. And then she was like, wait, this is actually like good. And I was like, are you just saying that? And she was like, no, like, this is good. And I was like, okay. And she was like, you should keep like doing this type of thing. So that, because she knew, she was smart. She was like, I know that people put together their SNL tape like over years, or like they work all year on an impression or a bit or whatever, because they know like come the summertime, they will be called. So anyway, so I put together that tape. And then at the same time, I used kind of that audition tape to audition for Just for Laughs Characters, which is like this comedy festival in Montreal. SNL saw me at Just for Laughs. they asked me to showcase, which is the step that you do before you screen test.
Mm-hmm.
And I showcased with Pete Davidson at UCB. And I did not get asked to go in front of Lauren because they said I was too young, too green, which is my last name, which I thought was funny.
So at this point, you were what, like 23 or younger?
I guess I was 23. Yeah, I was 23, and so then the next year I submitted a packet and I got called in to interview for the writer's job. And I had in my head this whole idea that like, well, they saw my tape and then they saw me showcase and then they liked my material. So then they called me in or blah, blah, blah. Turns out, no, there was like no. I was on set like really late at night with the head writer at the time at SNL, Rob Klein, and he and I were both working on Shrill. And I was like, yeah. And then it was like my showcase and And he was like, oh, we didn't know about, this is the man who hired me. We didn't know about any of that. We read your packet and we thought it was good and we interviewed you and you didn't seem crazy. So it's like, oh, okay. Like I had this whole like legend in my mind. And then like in reality, it was like, they just kind of read my sketches.
And were you working at that time? Like now suddenly you're going to like leave whatever job you have, if you have a job. I mean,
oh my God, yes.
So like, what's the story of like finding out that you get this writing job?
So I was working at so after college, I worked in this diner in Park Slope called Dizzy's, which no longer exists, but if anybody's been in Park Slope, they know Dizzy's. I think it shut down during the pandemic, which is very sad. But I was working at this diner. And then I also like PA'd and was trying to become like a writer's assistant. And I had been hired. I had been a PA on this random pilot for a Bravo game show. And no, I wasn't a PA. I was a research assistant. And
do you remember anything about that show?
It was based on Google searches and it never went forward.
Okay.
This guy who I had worked with on that Bravo show called me and he was like, hey, do you want to be an associate producer on this true TV show that I'm doing about celebrity hobbies? And I was like, okay. And he was like, what's your rate? And I was like, and I had no idea what a rate was. So I texted my friend and I was like, what is like an associate producer rate? I also like didn't really know what that meant. And she was like, ask for like $1,700 a week, which was like crazy to me. You know, I'm making like $400 a weekend on a good week at the diner. And so I'm like, $1,700? And he's like, yeah, that's fine. I guess I got hired end of August. Beginning of August, I start working this associate producer job. And I'm like, okay, I'm going into like where it was like kind of like Fort Union Square area. And I'm like, I'm an associate producer and I work in television. I had no idea how to do what they wanted me to do. I had such anxiety. I had to like call, like it would be like, you know, The Rock. This is not true, but it would be like this. It'd be like, we heard The Rock loves aquariums. So we're going to take him to Puerto Rico to find fish for his aquarium. And it's going to be in on his aquarium hobby. And they would be like, call Puerto Rico and see where we can go to look for lionfish. And I was like, I don't know how to do this. And I'm like full of anxiety. So I was just kind of Googling, but never calling anyone. And I would have these meetings with this woman who was my boss. And she would be like, okay, yeah. So like, when can we go? And I'd be like, oh, I have to find out. And then I would just say like, they're getting back to me. They're getting back to me. Shit was really about to hit the fan because I wanted this job because it was paying me so much, but I had no idea how to do it. And then one day I was like, can I have Wednesday off? And this woman who like already hated me because I was so incompetent was like, why? And I was like, I'm interviewing at SNL. And because I was like, I just should be honest with her because like, this is a big deal. I mean, I should just be honest with her. And she was like, really? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, no. And I was like, no, I actually am. I'm a comedian and I guess this is happening. And she was like, okay, good luck, I guess. Like, idiot. Like, she's like, this girl has no idea how to do her fucking job. Like, they're not going to hire her at SNL. And this is like, also like, I feel like when you're working jobs like that, like even if it's a little bit, you like make a quick friend. And like, I was sitting next to this woman this whole time that I was there. And like, we had become like close because we're like sitting next to each other, but I truly only known her for like 4 weeks. And I told her, I was like, I think that they're going to like call me today because I heard that somebody asked for my number, like the head writer had asked for my number. And we're sitting there and it's like 11 a.m. on Friday and my phone rings and she looks at me and she was like so happy for me. And she was like, this is it. And I was like, oh my God. And I get the phone call. I go into a random conference room and Rob Klein, who's the head writer at the time, is like, so we'd like you to be writer on the show. I don't know if I was crying yet. I think I like floated above my body. Like my heart was just beating so fast. And then I like go out to like the little like bullpen of like all of my coworkers who again thought I was so fucking bad at my job and I had known for 4 weeks. And I was like, I got it. And they all got up and cheered for me. And we were in like a shared workspace and people were like, what's going on? And they were like, she just got hired to be a writer at SNL. And everybody applauded for me. And then my boss, who hated me, was like, get the hell out of here, girl. I never want to see your ass again. Happy for you, babe. And I literally like packed up my bag and never went back.
I mean, that's like a scene out of a movie.
I know. And also like, it was so nice of them to be like so excited for me. It's so sweet.
So, wow.
I know. That was a pretty epic story. Taking me back.
So I guess like the follow-up question to all of this is, how did you survive working at SNL?
Mama, who knows? Who knows?
Because because like I've interviewed a few cast members, longtime cast members at SNL, and I know how like psychologically torturous it can be. I grew up obsessed with Saturday Night Live. And so, I've read the oral history, like everyone knows how it works. So I'm not going to ask you, the host comes in on Monday. Like, yeah, we all know. But how did you really survive just like day to day? And you were there for what, like 6 years?
I was there for 6 years. The show it's really a lot of high highs and low lows. And when I first got there, I had been told kind of like by like my agents and like people had been at the show before. And once you get there, there's like a lot of like stuff of like, Lauren hates this, but he likes this. And this cast member is, you should try and write for them because they have clout. And this person has less clout. Or like, you should try and get this person's name on your sketch because that means it won't get pulled. And all these like games, essentially. And I wasn't good at playing the games. I fully tried, but I really wasn't good at it. And I also wasn't good at convincing people I was cool, which kind of mattered. And I just kind of like sort of think my first year, I assume people just thought I was like quiet and didn't really think I was funny. And I just told myself, I've been in a lot of environments at NYU, at UCB, and every UCB class I ever took where, and I'm just gonna be honest, where there's a day where everybody realizes I'm that bitch. Like, there's that day, there's always that dude who's sitting there who thinks he's fucking God's gift, and one day I fucking destroy, and he's sitting there with his dick between his legs. Sorry to get real, but that is,
No, I'm very into this.
Let me own my confidence. So I was like, if I just fucking write my sketches every week, one day they're going to know that I know what the fuck I'm doing. And it took forever. It took forever because I had a lot of like self-doubt and I was trying to write with people and I would be like, oh, I don't really think this is it, but I would like defer to them. And then I would write something really good, but then they wouldn't even read it because there were too many sketches that week and I was the newest one. And so I was like lowest on the totem pole. And I went until like April of my first year, never got a sketch on. All of the other first year writers had gotten a sketch on. And I had like gotten jokes in and stuff like that and like helped on pieces, but like nothing with my name on it had ever been like produced. And I wrote this Sound and Music sketch for Ariana Grande, and it just like hit, like just that magic happened, and she was really funny in it. And without knowing it, I had like written to her performance, and then it was in. And I was like, okay, it all worked. Eventually, it all happened. I wrote a sketch that was funny enough to get in. They let it be read. The performers were good in it. All of these crazy elements have to come together. It eventually happened. And then that sketch got on, and I was like so proud of that. And I was like, okay, well, if anything, I got a sketch on SNL. And then I wrote another sketch for Brie Larson. This was like 2 weeks later, called The Cut, which was a Mother's Day sketch about like that like little spiky hairdo that all the moms get. Mm-hmm. And it was like, oh, when are you going to get the cut? When are you going to get the cut? And it was kind of a joke. I can't remember how it played. Things always play better in my head. And then I'm like, that sketch was fucking legendary. And then I watched it on YouTube and I'm like, okay, medium laughs at best. But anyway, in my head, it was a fucking killer. And it was very like a joke heavy sketch. And it was also very like my sensibility, very female. I had all the female cast in it. And it went, and Lauren turned to me and he said, nice piece. And that was like one of the first things, the only words he had ever said to me. And later he would say other words that were a nice piece. But that was like, I was like, oh, I think I maybe stuck the landing at the last minute.
And this was during your first year?
That was my first year.
And then, so how did like year 2 go?
Year 2, I think there was more pressure because I felt like year 1, if you don't get a sketch in, it's like you're a newbie or a freshman. Year 2, if you go a couple of weeks without a sketch in, it's like you don't really have that excuse anymore. And there definitely were like gaps, but my first show back, I think I had 2 sketches in. And one was one that I had written, basically just me and Adie Bryant. It was Margot Robbie. That sketch ended up getting cut because like I think it was like accidentally 8 minutes long, which like wasn't cool. But I don't know. I think that my second year, again, high highs, low lows. Like for every like good week you have it, there's a week where like you almost walk into traffic, which happened to me one week because I was so sad I wasn't looking where I was going, and I was like, oh, this is how it happens. But I think that again, it was like you build skills and you kind of like build sort of a sense of what works, and you also like know people, and kind of shit just ended up slowly getting better, kind of not week by week, but like if I look at my 6 years, like things just slowly got easier. I got more respected. I had better relationships with people. I had proven myself more. And then of course there's always like 3 months where you get nothing in and people don't even want to make eye contact with you. But like overall, it got better.
I think people don't realize that it is really the writer of the sketch who is the entire creative force behind it. Like you're in charge of, like there are all these different, from what I understand, there are all these different departments at SNL. Mm-hmm. But you're really like, okay, I want the hair to look like this. This is what I want the set to look like. All of these different pieces. And if Lorne doesn't, from what I understand, if Lorne doesn't like something, like for example, if he doesn't like the way the set looks, he's not going to go to the set design, the set department. He's actually going to go to you, the writer.
And he's going to cut your sketch too, which happened to me all the time where they were like, I was like, it played. And they're like, he doesn't like the wig. And I'm like, okay, we'll get a new wig. But no. Yes, that is true. And I think that's been a big kind of shift from sketch to scripted TV because yes, at SNL, you're not making every single creative decision because you're working with like the fucking best in the biz, in all the heads of these departments. But it is true that like he goes to you for the final call, and it's your job if you walk onto a set and you're like, he's gonna hate this. It's your job to convince the Tony Award winning set designer that you need him to change it. And he's like, what do you mean? You said you wanted Christmas. This is Christmas. And you're like, I know, but You know what I mean? Like, that was my life. I was like, how do I tell this man who has been or woman who has been working in television since before I was born that I need them to redo this? How do I do it?
What was like your biggest fuck up at SNL?
Oh my God, what was my biggest fuck up? Ooh, okay. Damn, how do I choose? Well, I mean, I'm not even going to talk about sketches that I wrote that ate complete shit on television because, like, people can just, like,
Google it.
I mean, like, the moment where you are, like, watching something. I mean, my writing partner at SNL is Fran Gillespie, who's the most hilarious woman in the world. And you're, like, watching a monologue. And I hated writing monologues. And I wrote some really shitty ones. You're watching a monologue, and you're just, like, flipping the script because you can't wait for it. Should I even say this? You're like you're following along in the script sentence by sentence because you need to track when it will be over because you can't wait for it to be over. And then it gets no laughs and you just put the script in the trash and you go get a fucking drink because it's like, and I don't want people to think that it's not because I didn't work hard on that monologue. I worked so hard on every shitty monologue I wrote, but sometimes shit is just bad and you can only polish a turd so much or like it just doesn't work. So that was my biggest fuck ups. My actual biggest fuck up was one time, okay, but this wasn't my fault. This was Colin Joe's fault. And I'm going to call him out on this podcast right now, which is I was working with him on some cold open. I don't even remember which one it was. I don't even remember because I blocked it out because it was traumatic for me. And I was working with him and he's the head writer. And even though I'm a supervising writer, I like can't turn in this script until he's like, it's good. Mm-hmm. And he's doing Weekend Update and he's doing this and he's doing that. And I'm like, he has to look at the fucking script. It's almost 11 o'clock. I haven't turned in the changes for the fucking cold open. What the fuck is going on? So finally, like the producers like help me hunt him down. And then these other writers start rewriting the script. It wasn't 11 o'clock. I think it was like 10:45. And I was like, what are you doing rewriting the script? We gotta turn this in right now. We don't have time to be like, what's a better Biden joke? Like, what the fuck? So then now the script that has no changes in it has new changes in it is my fucking problem. Because he goes off and he does all the other million things that he has to do at the show. He has a million things to do at the show. This is not his fault, but you know what I mean? Got distracted. We all did. And I'm sitting there with the script person who has to put in the changes. And she turns to me and she goes, "You're in trouble." And I was like, what? And she was like, she's just putting in the changes. She's like, Leslie, this fucking angel in the script department who I fucking love, who's saved my ass a million times. And she's writing in the changes to send to cards. And she's like, "You're in trouble." And I was like, oh my God, what if we don't have a cold open? What if it's my fucking fault? So anyway, I blocked out a lot of what happened after. I was having a rolling panic attack for about an hour at that point. I handed the script off to a head writer that was not involved in the sketch and said, "Can you go to cards?" Because he basically saw that I was about to cry, but I couldn't go and cry. I had to go and tell Alec Baldwin what the changes were. So then, and I'm like beat red in the face. I went to go and talk to Cass and he went to check the cards and make sure that they were right. And I go and Alec Baldwin's getting his Trump stuff on and he's like, "Where's Jost?" And I was like, I'm telling you these. And I tell him the changes and he's like, "Okay." And because it's like a fucking God bless at that point. Mm-hmm. And I didn't watch the sketch. I went in the second floor dressing rooms and I went where the extras holding were. And I had a crying panic attack for 20 minutes. And I didn't watch the sketch. I couldn't watch it air. I mean, like, when I say panic attack, I mean like panic attack, like crying, hyperventilating, spiraling, spinning out. So much adrenaline was running through my body. It is the most stressed out I have ever been, ever. I can't even express to you how stressful it was. It was insane. And I wasn't saving anybody's life. It was just like TV. Lord.
And yet you have 5 Emmy nominations to your name.
Lord, miracles happen every day.
Even
You
with
know
those,
what I mean?
even with those shitty monologues.
I mean, I shouldn't talk so out of school, but I'll admit when something I wrote wasn't good.
It is officially the start of the holiday season, and if you want to avoid boring, basic, and bland gifts this year, Uncommon Goods is truly your secret weapon. Whether you're shopping for a secret Santa or for your kids or your friends, Uncommon Goods knows exactly what you want. I want to tell you about two of my favorite items that I think would make perfect gifts. Number one, they have tons of puzzles, and I do love this specific murder mystery puzzle. And secondly, look up the Urban Map Glass. So these are cocktail rock glasses etched with your favorite city's distinct grid. You can literally pick the city you want, whether it's New York, LA, Miami, New Orleans. I think this is a perfect holiday gift. These fine products are often made in small batches, so you want to grab them now before they're sold out. And they cover everything from art, jewelry, kitchenware, home, and barware. And with every purchase you make at Uncommon Goods, they give $1 back to a nonprofit partner of your choice. They've donated more than $2.5 million to date. So here's what. To get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/hot takes. That's uncommongoods.com/hot takes for 15% off. Don't miss out on the limited time offer. Uncommon Goods is totally out of the ordinary. Couple different things I want to talk to you about. There have obviously always been gay people working at Saturday Night Live. There have always been gay writers, Paul Appel, James Anderson, but you were there to witness the first openly gay cast members. I mean, I guess Kate McKinnon was already there, but then once Bowen joins, which really blows the whole thing wide open in terms of what the cast members are willing to do. What did you observe culturally at SNL as a workplace and also as creative place? Kind of adds a layer to which you can write to.
It is so amazing, like you said, because the show, I mean, let's just say gay people are funnier. They just are. And it's so amazing that a show that has always had gay people on the writing side get to write for gay people on the cast side. And I think that when there's somebody whose voice, you can really feel it when you're on the show, when there is a voice in culture and there's a voice in society that is not represented on the show. And I would say that of any minority or race, creed, sexuality, anybody you can just tell when like Drag Race is the biggest show and all of the incredible language that came from that world. I mean, not just the Drag Race world, but like the queer world are all now out in the culture. Like Cardi B is saying occur.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And then you don't have that person who is best to express that on the show. And I think it's so important. And I think the show actually has done a really good job of this, especially lately, of making sure that that conversation can always be represented on the show as much as they can. And I think they really work hard to close those gaps.
Like, what did you think of that interview? Like Rob Schneider did an interview where calling back to like 2016, saying that when Kate McKinnon sang Hallelujah, like after the 2016 election, that was when he knew, quote unquote, SNL was over. Were you just like, okay, we know who this guy is?
Well, I mean, I didn't even hear about that until you told me just
really
now.
It's actually it's so weird that he was talking about this was something that came out literally in September. He was probably on some podcast. I don't know why he was asked about that from 2016, but
I think that moment is a really powerful moment because I think it did what story, I mean, you know, it's a comedy show, of course, it's a sketch show, of course, that's never going to be taken away, but it's also like a reflection of America and the consciousness. Yes. It's an American cultural artistic institution. And that moment was important to a lot of people because we were in mourning. And the show had reflected that entire societal conversation all throughout that election. And in that moment, it was reflecting the conversation and the very real feelings of, and we took a stand. We took a stand by, I mean, I shouldn't say we, but the show did, of course, make a statement and didn't play the middle in that moment. And they were right. They were on the right side of history. Absolutely. They were on the right side of history. And if some people don't go to the show for that, then some people don't go to the show for that.
How did you know that the timing was right for you to jump from SNL this year?
How did I know? Well, so I didn't, this season will be the season that's airing now is my second season out of the show. So okay. I wasn't on the show last season. So I think that during the pandemic, like a lot of people, kind of my life slowed down and I got to really check in with a lot of like the lifestyle choices I was making by working there, which was just like, I was working 70, 80 hours a week and didn't really have much time for a personal life and didn't have any work-life balance at all and was like living on takeout. And yeah, and I had to check in with myself when lockdown happened and I was having a great time. I mean, like personally, me locked in my apartment, cooking meals for myself and catching up on all the TV I hadn't watched. I mean, I was scared. I was sad. I was like so scared. But like my day-to-day life, people would be like, I'm going crazy. And I'm like, I'm actually really enjoying myself. And that was a big wake-up call for me. And I think I just realized that if I stayed there, I was sort of just kind of choosing to do it forever. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't 24 anymore. And I was like, oh, okay, I know I can't do this forever. Now I know that I can't do this forever. And so maybe because I know it's better to leave sooner rather than later and just start that next chapter. And I kind of feel like 6 years was an amazing amount of time to be there. I feel like I did everything that I could have done at the show.
I guess finally, I know that you've also written for like the Emmys and Golden Globes. What is that experience like writing for awards shows?
It's so fun. I mean, like the Emmys were crazy experience because it was like SNL on steroids. Like it was just like so many celebrities. For me, it's like you really build that skill set at the show of like writing a joke specific to somebody's movie that they were in. And like I also like am a pop culture fiend, you know, like I watch everything. I like feel like I know a lot of stuff that like shouldn't be taking up space in my brain. And it's always, I love going to an award show, honey. I love to get my little dress on. I love to go to the after party and stare at the beautiful people. And if I get to write a couple jokes and get a ticket, I mean, a lot of times in my life, I'm just like, what am I complaining about? Literally nothing. I lead a charmed life, Jess. It's fun, obviously stressful at times, but so is traffic, you know?
Perfect way to end. You're so much fun.
Oh, thank you for saying that. You're so much fun.
Thank you so much. This was great. I mean, so right now, like you're working on the second season I love that you guys are writing it before it's officially been picked up. Just plugging away.
I know. I mean, I think it's really going to be okay. I think it's just like Showtime, Paramount merging. There's just like,
it's weird. They used to like always announce, you know, pickups for shows, but I know even with like a few random shows that I love, they would wait like way longer, particularly I wonder even if it's a Showtime thing because of that merger. But anyway, that has nothing to do with anything. SUDI GREEN, tell everybody just your Instagram handle. If you're on Twitter, tell everybody all that.
You can follow me at SUDI GREEN on all socials, honey.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thanks, Jess.
This was great.
Thanks.
Everyone, please follow me, JessXNYC, on Instagram. I have tons of videos from past interviews, including this one. Same goes for over on YouTube. Just plug in hot takes and deep dives, throw in my name, and we will see you soon.